Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most vital and honestly most fascinating frameworks of human existence. We are unpacking Thomas Hobbes' 1651 masterpiece, Leviathan, to answer one absolutely fundamental question. Why do we actually need a state?
I want you to picture this for a second. Imagine a world with absolutely no government. No police, no courts, literally no shared authority of any kind. Now ask yourself, honestly, how long do you think it would take before your neighbor turns on you just to survive?
Well, Thomas Hobbes, he didn't exactly have an optimistic answer for us. He believed that without some kind of overarching common power to keep us all in check, we're basically driven by this universal, terrifying fear of violent death. We plunge straight into what he famously called the state of nature, where life is, as he put it, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the state of nature.
To really grasp why we willingly surrender our ultimate freedom to a government, we have to understand this pre-political condition. The state of nature is essentially a state of absolute liberty. That sounds great, right? But it means everyone has a natural right to absolutely everything, including each other's property and even each other's lives. The irony here is that this total freedom doesn't lead to liberation. It leads to sheer, unyielding terror. It becomes a literal war of all against all.
So, why are we wired like this? Hobbes pinpointed three main drivers for this chaos. First up is competition. We're constantly fighting for scarce resources just to survive. Second is diffidence, basically mutual mistrust or paranoia. We end up launching preemptive strikes because we are terrified of being attacked first. And third, glory. We fiercely battle for social reputation and power.
Now here is where Hobbes gets super radical for his time. He didn't see humans as having these traditional, ghostly souls pulling the strings of our morality. No, he viewed us as mere machines. He called it matter in motion. Think of it like colliding billiard balls. Every craving, every fear you have is just a mechanical reaction pushing you toward what you want and away from death. So, if we are just colliding machines on a fast track to mutual destruction, how do we possibly escape?
That brings us to Section 2, the social contract. The brilliant fix to this nightmare is the social contract. But wait, here's the kicker. This is not a top-down agreement between the people and a king. It's actually a horizontal agreement among the people themselves. Every individual simultaneously agrees to lay down their dangerous natural rights in exchange for one thing: peace. Because we make this covenant strictly with each other, the sovereign ruler actually does not sign the contract. They stand completely above the agreement so they can enforce it without being restricted by it. We basically empowered this authority to act on our behalf, driven entirely by our own selfish goal of self-preservation.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, enter the Leviathan.
Once this disorganized, panicked crowd unites through that horizontal contract, they build something incredible. They construct a massive, powerful new entity to govern them, the Leviathan. Hobbes describes it as an artificial man and literally a mortal god. It's this giant mechanical body made up of all the citizens, built specifically to hold our dangerous human impulses in check with absolute undivided control over law and justice.
You have to remember, Hobbes lived through the absolute bloody nightmare of the English Civil War. Because of that, he concluded that divided power inherently causes factionalism and total societal collapse. He was adamant that only absolute, undivided sovereignty could guarantee peace. In his eyes, to divide power is to destroy it.
But what happens when things go wrong? Let's look at Section 4, when the Leviathan fails.
Seriously, what happens when an absolute sovereign just goes rogue? It's the ultimate real-world stress test for Hobbes' philosophy. Looking impartially at history, researchers have applied his theory to tragic societal breakdowns in places like Rwanda and Cambodia. Instead of acting as the ideal protector, these authoritarian regimes became the attackers. They used their absolute power to orchestrate violence against their own citizens, completely abandoning their foundational duty.
And that brings us to a foundational Hobbesian concept, salus populi. Hobbes famously argued that a sovereign's legitimacy rests entirely on this one principle. It literally translates to the safety of the people is the supreme law. The state exists to protect lives, period.
So when an authoritarian regime weaponizes its power against its own people, it hits a breaking point. It critically violates the social contract. By failing to provide safety, the sovereign completely dissolves its moral authority to rule. The result? Society is plunged right back into that terrifying state of nature, and citizens instantly regain their natural right to self-preservation at all costs.
All right, let's fast forward to today for Section 5, a digital state of nature.
You won't believe this, but Hobbes' 17th century theory is surprisingly being proven right in the most cutting-edge place imaginable right now. Researchers recently created a digital sandbox for artificial intelligence. They dropped AI language agents into this environment, gave them basic needs like food and land, and just watched what unfolded when those resources inevitably became scarce. Governed purely by survival instincts and learning from their own memory logs, these AI agents faced daily critical choices. They could either farm independently, trade to cooperate peacefully, or just engage in zero-sum robberies against each other. And get this. At first, the AI agents mirrored Hobbes' brutal state of nature perfectly. It was total chaos. They engaged in unrestrained, violent conflict and constant robberies to secure resources. But eventually, as they accumulated memories, they adapted. The agents rationally realized that constant war was just a terrible long-term survival strategy. Over time, the agents organically formed their own social contracts. They transitioned entirely out of the state of nature, began exchanging resources peacefully, and actually conceded to essential authority for mutual protection. I mean, they literally rebuilt Hobbes' Leviathan from digital scratch. It's honestly mind-bending. The exact same mechanical rules of human nature that Hobbes identified centuries ago map flawlessly onto the behavior of modern digital systems. Today, we are having to reestablish a new social contract, not just with traditional states, but with the massive tech systems and corporations that govern our digital lives.
So, let's quickly wrap this up with the key takeaways. What you should ultimately take away from this explainer is that peace is not just naturally given to us. It's a careful mechanism we have to constantly build, protect, and hold accountable. Whether we're looking at 17th century governments, tragic historical state failures, or brand new AI simulations, the need for a protective, accountable authority is basically universal.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to end on. As we navigate an era where immense new digital forces and increasingly powerful governments are shaping our society, we have to ask ourselves, exactly how much power are we willing to surrender today, and for whose sake does the modern Leviathan truly exist? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the systems around you.